So, quite in time. Welcome all that late into the conference to my actually first ever talk on a public conference. The title says it, Whale Care One-on-One. The honest question, who thought this is about Docker? No one? Cool, you all read the abstract. Perfect. So, to explain it a bit, it came to my ear that Mike Milinkovic actually is referring to Tractus-X as a project, as the whale project, because we are that big. And we thought, even though he didn't confirm it to me, we could just use it for the title. So it's not about Docker, it's about Tractus-X, the project I'm working in for the last 2 years. And let's see what we are looking at today. First of all, I'm explaining you a bit the background, Tractus-X, Catena-X. I guess you have heard these terms throughout the conference. And then I actually want to take you on a journey from around 2 years earlier and how we started as a government-funded project and went all the way through to being an Eclipse-Foundation project on GitHub. Also, I'm talking a bit about how it feels like working in Tractus-X right now, and recap that quite shortly and give you some points of lessons learned through our journey. But before I start, some info about me. I guess the first part is not interesting for you, but what I wanted to tell you is that actually before I started, I didn't have any open source experience at all. For me, it was, okay, I'm pushing my code to GitHub, and that's it. So that's how I started. And then this happened. I joined Catena-X and Tractus-X in December 2021. And through the journey, I and the colleagues of mine grew into a team that is now actually driving open source governance and community topics and alignments. And it led to me becoming a committer in that project. So I guess that's quite cool journey. But as I promised, first Catena-X and Tractus-X. Catena-X is actually an association. Its main goal is to create an automotive data space for sovereign data exchange, meaning companies throughout the supply chain in the automotive industry can connect to that data space, keep their data, and share it on their own, under their own conditions. It's mainly functioning as a governance body for standardization, certification, and so on. And out of that, there was this consortia created. It is the government-funded part. 28 member companies were joining that. And this actually kick-started the whole open source development process for the data space. And just to keep in mind also, the data space itself, the whole ecosystem also contains commercial app provider and service providers. Yeah, check out the link. Actually, I have quite a few QR codes here for websites, so in case you want to look it on your phone, get ready. And then there's Tractus-X. You can see the logos are actually similar, at least similar colors. It's closely connected. And like I said, Tractus-X is our Eclipse-Foundation project, and this is hosting reference implementations for the Catena-X data space. The link will actually lead you to our GitHub pages where we have a lot of documentation, and maybe that gives you good insight onto the open source development. Okay, that's enough background, so let me take you on that journey, like I said. It's way back, actually. It started even before I joined. It was a monorepo in a Catena-X GitHub org. We had different subdirectories for each component and service and app. Everything together in one repo, multiple workflows defined. There was also Terraform stuff for setting up testing infrastructure that was shared across all of these members and teams. And what I, from my personal point of view, wanted to highlight is there were 2 teams. One was called the DevSecOps tooling, or DevOps tooling at that point, DevOps tooling team, and the Catena-X stack team that actually I was part of in the beginning. But to be honest, it wasn't really clear what the Catena-X stack should be, and also not quite clear how much is tooling, how much is infrastructure, and so on. So, yeah. And there were a lot of Azure resources provided for the teams so that they could test out their stuff inside the consortia. but yeah, we'll get to some more interesting points, because actually we had some issues at the beginning, merge conflicts. I can actually show it to you all here. Oh, sorry. Actually, these two teams that are kind of competing for the same customers led to some who is doing what, who is actually responsible. Also, the teams could create their own resources through the Terraform modules and GitHub workflows that were in place. And it was very invisible who is doing what, who is managing what, who is responsible, who to talk to in case you want to have something. And just a minor fact, in the end, it ended up to be very vendor-specific, at least cloud provider-specific, because everyone was just creating the resources like they wanted. They were using Azure native functions and so on. So just to keep in mind as that we encountered that. So we definitely at that point said, this is not the way that we can become an Eclipse-Foundation GitHub project. That won't work that way. So we did some preparations on our way there. These two teams that didn't really know who is doing what were merged. Now I'm part of the system team. So we have a new name, we joined forces, and we're doing both tooling and infrastructure, much clearer. We created a new GitHub organization because we couldn't handle the other one. We didn't even know who got admin access on that at that time. It's called Catena-X and G for next generation. It definitely will get better just by calling it like that. Additionally, we also created product teams. So you actually had the visible view of who is involved in what. And later on, that proved also quite helpful because we could use it for RBAC in our infrastructure, actually. And we created shared infrastructure, so not everyone was creating infrastructure like they want and using tools what they want, but we as a system team created Kubernetes cluster, like a classical staging concept, and provided it for the teams. So yeah, that was one of the important topics. We also set up a support process, not in the open yet, but that was kind of cool. We could document, everyone was going through us. It was a lot to take in for us. But at least we got a notion on what is going on actually in that project. That was also helpful in the end. That is a quite recent screenshot here that you can see. So in our consortia GitHub org, we have plus or minus 128 repos. This also contains forks from our Eclipse Tractus-X repo to work that companies can work on. Like I said, we have a lot of people in there. Yesterday, 2 days ago, it was 281, divided to 42 teams, actually. So you could get a notion on how big that is. And with all that, the responsibility of this system team could be summarized at that point as we had the infrastructure team and supporting. We were managing the GitHub org and the infrastructure. That actually helped us. We got better at some things. It was actually easy to manage. We still have Terraform stuff there, up there in the org. If you have time to check it out, you can actually see how we provision our infrastructure and what we are doing there. That's also transparent, which is great. And I think a GitHub org with us as a support team in the background was quite flexible for the teams. They could ask for new repositories instead of creating folders and so on. Branch protection on your own measures was possible. But still, there were points that were still not right where we want to get. But actually, I don't want to talk about that in detail. Instead, I want to take you on the next step, basically, because, like I said, the way how we set up the infrastructure is scaled really well. To be honest, we would maybe just need 1.5 or 2 persons to do that. There was just never an issue. It was easy to onboard people, and that's it. And at that time, the first teams were actually moving to Eclipse Tractus-X, which is our Eclipse-Foundation GitHub organization. So they started the process already. We, as a system team, got more and more requests about how do I do that? What is the best practice on that? Because we had so many people joining with various different backgrounds, software developers, just project managers, different languages and tooling, a lot of them new to Kubernetes as well. So there was these best practice requests. And also, it just happened somehow, we got much more closer to the Eclipse-Foundation. We had a lot of talks with the very helpful guys from them. Also, what I want to shout out here, we took some money and we actually invested in open source governance consulting. She's actually here. I haven't asked her directly if I could mention her. But that also proved very good because, like I said, no open source experience at all, but we are the ones that get the requests about how do I do it. So I don't know who tells me. That was cool. And general open source topics requests were also incoming. This was also the time where we joined forces with the consortia internal security team. That's actually a huge team. And that's how we even got more input on what is going on, what should we take care of, and so on. And so like I said, we shifted a bit the focus of being mainly the infrastructure guys to also getting involved into the open source stuff and aligning people because we were asked for best practices, so we made them up and we were driving that a bit at the guidance part. So here's actually the alignments that we had. It's maybe not too interesting yet, but like I said, we are going Kubernetes native. We wanted to get rid of these vendor logins, even if someone was using Azure Functions, for example, or AWS Lambdas. We asked them to get rid of it. If they really needed it, we would have set up Knative or something like that. We also told the teams, please get rid of all these weird version schemes that you are using, align on one. We chose semantic versioning. I think that's quite great. We also had a lot of onboarding sessions for new teams because we found out that during that time, even though we were already quite big, there were even more people joining all the time, even more products rose from out of nowhere. And we said, okay, to already give them a good starting point, we're just doing an onboarding session. They came to us, the whole team, all of these interdisciplinary functions joined that call, and we gave them input, like as much as we could to jumpstart them. Also, minor thing maybe is we created SIG repositories. SIG is special interest groups. Maybe you know it. It's maybe most known from Kubernetes. Right now we have a special interest group for releases, for security, and for infrastructure. But again, I'm not going into detail more about that. What I will go into more detail about is the weekly office hours meetings and our Tractus-X release guidelines. So stay tuned. Here, the weekly office hour meeting, that QR code will lead you to a blog on GitHub pages. It's still in the consortia, GitHub org, because we cannot do everything public, but at least the meeting minutes, they are there. You could just check them out and see what we are usually talking about. The office hour in general is just a 1 hour meeting. First half of an hour, all the interdisciplinary function like open source governance, security, and system team. We are there. We have a regular agenda. We just give updates, spark ideas, and so on. And the other 30 minutes is basically what I want to call community time. So a whole lot of developers join that. And it's just open. There's no agenda. We just talk about whatever comes up. The cool thing that I wanted to mention from these points that I wrote here is it's actually also a chance for committer nominees to introduce themselves. I find that highly valuable. I'm not sure how often you get committer nominations, but since we are so big, we have them quite a few times. And you also don't know everyone. So actually what we ask the people before they even write their nomination request, just jump in, say a few words about you, and then you have a face that's awesome. And of course, if you're talking together, you can share problems, ask for help, or even share ideas. So that's the office hour meetings. Like I said, you can read about what is going on there on the blog. And the second, a bit bigger topic is Tractus-X Release Guidelines. So since we as the system team together with open source governance, we saw there's so much happening and we need to align somehow. We said we need to write that down as documentation, and that's the Tractus-X Release Guidelines. I highly recommend to check that out. The link will bring you to our GitHub pages again. to the section where we have that defined. It's basically a set of guidelines for all the products, and they have to comply to. It's our project rules on how we want to have the products and contributors to it. I don't want to say behave, but how the project has to be structured and what's important for us. We try to follow a what, why, how. I will show you an example in a second. To be honest, we are not there all of the time, but again, we are on a journey. And what's also important is we really have a documented process on how we introduce new rules for our project, and we follow that. You can see that there's pull requests, we ask for reviews on the mailing list, and so on. So quite cool. But to the examples. Here's first a screenshot of the website. You can see we structure it a bit into categories, and you can see all of these TRG topics can also be unfolded. So there's a lot, but that wouldn't fit the screen. That's why I said check it out. And here I have a condensed examples on how that could look like. It's not a screenshot, it's actually, I condensed it a bit. So TRG 203, you don't have to remember that number, but it's just about repo structure. I wanted to show that because it starts very simple. We just say our repos, the 50 that we got, should follow a specific structure. Just common files that you have to have, and some that should be organized in specific folders. I'll tell you why we do that in a second. And also the TRG says it a bit. First, maybe plain and simple, we are an Eclipse-Foundation project, so there's rules, like the license, code of conduct, you know it, I guess. And the second one is a bit addition from us. Since we know our GitHub org is so big, the apps and tools in there, it's so much business context, you cannot grasp it all together. But if someone is coming, regardless of which repository he's looking at, he will find documentation, for example, because there's only one place in each repository, and you don't have to look in every repository where it is. The how in that TRG, yeah, just do it. It's not quite, it's quite simple. But I wanted to show another example where the why, the how is a bit more big. That's the non-root container release guideline that we have. What, yeah, must not. I mean, we highlighted here. If someone can remind me how that must not should stuff is named, I think it has a name. We can talk after that session. The why here, I kept it quite short, but just to give you an insight on how the how part could look like in one of the release guidelines. Here we give specific instructions. On the left side is a Docker file. How do you add a user in your Docker file? How to specify that it's running as that user. And the right part is a Kubernetes bot manifest. And there we also provide examples on how you would do that to give a very low entry hurdle for anyone coming as a new contributor. Yeah, that about the release guidelines. I could talk days about what else we did, but these were just the two examples I wanted to mention. So let's look at it. What is Tractus-X today? Like I said, we have easy accessibility because of our alignments. The documentation part is quite easy, I think, and you can get that. We actually have a community forming, and that's basically thanks to our office hours. I mean, each week, 1 hour, you always see the familiar faces. You know your colleagues. And of course, due to knowledge exchange, I mean, I guess it's not new, but writing it here, it really helped us. Maybe it encouraged you to do something similar. But like I also said, it's a lot to take in. If a new contributor is coming, even though we have a lot of documentation, it's just huge. So that's still a downside. I don't think there's a countermeasure for that. And to be honest, it's quite repetitive. So especially my team, the system team, we are doing these onboardings. And you could say it's the same each week. We are trying to get better, like more documentation. We were also thinking about videos and so on, that we don't have to spend that much time into meetings. But it's just a fact, so, and it's fair enough, so why not? Living in Tractus-X, I think I didn't give you any stats on our Eclipse project. Here it is. This is the Eclipse-Foundation GitHub org. So you see, we actually also have 131 people there. I don't know if it's correct today. So this is I think, the Eclipse staff. They have teams there. It's the contributors and the committers and the project leads, for example. And we also have 58 repositories. So that's actually the open source development that we want to have for our data space as reference implementations. It's not as much as in our consortia organization, but still a lot. You can also see 15 projects, but I guess that's another talk because it's a huge topic we are currently involved with, how to open the planning on such a huge project. So I won't go into detail on that. But what I didn't talk about yet is how do we actually release and what is a release in Tractus-X, in the open source world. This is, by the way, it's still all, like I said, we had the consortia, the heavy lifting was done there, so most of the things are still from the consortia feather, but we used it. So there's this quality gate phase, like it's called. It's happening each release, which is roughly each quarter, or at least 4 times a year. There's all the values that the data space should follow that are checked for each release on each product, of course. And we have our release guidelines. I mean, anyways, they are basis for your day-to-day doing. They should be followed on each pull request, basically. But that release time, when we say we want to actually create a Tractus-X release right now, this is when we specifically check them. It's currently actually a manual process. We're trying to automate that. But yeah, that's like it is. And of course, we have open source governance check. Is your dependencies file up to date? Do you annotate your third-party licenses properly? And so on. That's all done. Heavy lifting each release. A lot of people involved. But it's cool. And the findings that we have in this review process, they are documented as a GitHub issue. I have a screenshot here. It's a small one, but actually for each release we create, based on a template, kind of a release ticket. I'm not sure, maybe you know it from the Eclipse-Foundation. They are doing it themselves if they are doing the Eclipse release. Again, in our point of view, that's quite transparent. Each team knows what we are trying to check. We are even checking each single release guideline. This is also a place to collaborate. Anyone could do these checks, basically. And you see where you are. And at the very bottom right, you can see we could also transform any findings directly into an issue. And the team can work on that and fix it before actually releasing. So that about release. Like I said, manual process, very heavy process. So we're trying to automate it. But to be honest, yeah, like I said, we don't have that much. What we do is basically we have kind of golden path GitHub workflows. So in our special interest group infrastructure, we are collecting a lot of GitHub workflows for common topics. I mean, we have alignments. Everyone is using Kubernetes. Everyone is using Helm. So we have workflows that everyone should use or could have used. And we share that, and everyone can just look at what the best practice is. We have, these are just 2 examples. Like I said, we actually also did create a new custom GitHub action for using the dash license tool. I guess you heard that on the conference as well. The only thing that we do different than Dash itself is, since we have these many build tools involved in the whole organization, it's just an action that is running Dash on the dependencies input file that you generate before because you know your build tool, and then it just checks, did the dependencies file that is present in your repository change to the current run. So in case you smuggled in a new third-party dependency, you updated a version of a library, this could actually be used in pull requests as well to verify that you're still up to date with your dependencies file. That's something that we automate. And we have a product-based dashboard that we actually built, also statically generated HTML. It's hosted via GitHub Pages again, so we stay close into the GitHub universe. And I can show you a screenshot in that. Because it's so big, we can just not have an overview of all. We need some help on that. So here it is. You can also scan the QR code. It will lead you to the dashboard. It's open. And then you can see how much products we have. And why I'm always referring to product and product-based dashboard. Actually, we kept it open for teams to choose a monorepo setup or multi-repo setup. And this dashboard groups it back together in case you chose a multi-repo setup. We invented a kind of a metadata file that you are required to maintain in your repo. This dashboard will go through it, collect all of your repos, and show it as a product, and will give you kind of a healthy state. Like you can see, we have our release guidelines that are actually that we can automate. We are doing that. We are going through your code, checking it, and then you'll get a broken heart or a green tick, and this helps us a lot already. Also the products, they can just look there and see the status of their project. So check that out if you want. But here, to summarize what I just talked about. So we started as a government-funded project in the consortia. We were jump-starting the open source development, and we are building reference implementations for Catena-X data space. We had that easy-to-maintain infrastructure set up, and therefore there was room for more for us, the system team. And then all the alignments and automation things started to happen. To move to Eclipse Tractus-X, office hours and release guidelines as specific examples on what helped us the most, I guess. Yeah, currently, like I said, is a very big topic how to get that consortia that is even more than 200 people, and the planning phase, how can we open that up for others to contribute? That's a huge discussion and actually not easy to do, but there's room for another talk, I guess. So like I promised, what's the lesson learned? What in these 2 years of journey have we learned about open source development and the journey in Eclipse? One of the things that we learned is start contributing inside the Eclipse infrastructure early. We actually got a bit comfortable in our Catena-X and G consortia GitHub org. And then suddenly you moved over to the Eclipse-Foundation, and a lot of people who were accustomed to being maintainer on their repo now don't have any official role, and that was hard for a lot to learn, and for us as well. You also have to care about where do I fork, where do these forks live? Can they live in your company GitHub organization, or do you need something else? I mean, we are a lot of companies working together, so if I would fork to Mercedes-Benz, how do I work together with Siggy, who's from SAP, and Gabo, who's from T-Systems? We cannot work on the same feature because I cannot invite them to my org or to our org. So that was a huge learning point for us. Having a governance team isn't that bad. I wouldn't have believed it before, but now that I'm actually inside a governance team, I think we give a lot back to our project. And like I said, I can only shout it out a couple more times. Taking money in investing in open source governance consulting was for us a game changer. Like I said, a lot of people, no open source experience at all, such a huge org, and then you move over to the Eclipse-Foundation, who is coming with their own processes on top of standard open source, I guess. Very, very beneficial, would recommend that to every project. That was also a good thing, I guess, not even relevant only for Tractus-X, but in general, what we found out is if you explain why you are asking things, that's specifically for the release guidelines, for example, it's just easier. The people will accept it easier than if you just tell them, you have to run rootless containers, and you have to generate your dependencies file. Give reasons behind, then I mean, they won't eat it easily, maybe, but at least the chance is higher that you will get positive feedback. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I cannot stress enough how much you can document and how good you can document. Maybe only half of your people will read documentation. They will still directly talk to you. And then another team comes and they forgot what you told them last time. So better to explain multiple times than just once, and then hope for the best. What we also learned is that it's hard to take away convenience that you grow a custom tool. That the example of moving to Eclipse, suddenly you're not a maintainer anymore. Having the shared infrastructure, you could manage your own GitHub packages, the Docker images, and now you have to move to Docker Hub, where you don't even have the credentials. It's just secret somewhere that you don't have access to. It is hard, but I mean, it is like it is. But if you think about, if you are aware of that fact, maybe go back to the top, just start contributing early, and you won't grow that accustomed to your convenience. Office hour meetings are great. I mean, you also maybe know it from Wayne, doing it for the Eclipse. For us, having that every week, 1 hour, it's not that much of an effort, but it really, really helped us on learning from each other, basically knowing faces, and growing that community, and talking about very different things. I mean, from legal stuff, what license do we put our stuff on? What is CC BY, Apache 2.0, and so on. Just a great format. And I think last but not least, it was hard for us finding the right balance between guidelines and rules. I mean, I said Tractus-X Release Guidelines, and they are kind of mandatory, but we also don't want to block anyone from inventing new ways. But finding the right balance between that is also actually hard, and we try to work around that by just opening it up to the community. So each time any discussion comes up in a chat, first thing we try to do is encourage people right on the mailing list, ask for other opinions, and that's, I guess, also a great topic. With that, I thank you very much. I hope it was interesting for you and you could get something out there. My colleague Carsten unfortunately couldn't be here. I could have also named a lot of other people who are working with us on that topic together. And yeah, thanks a lot. I'm open for questions. So anyone, questions? I have a mic here. Yep. I guess it's on. You can just pass it around after.
Okay. My question is, are these 281 folks working full-time for these projects, or is it part-time? Because in my personal opinion, in the consulting business, just working part-time in these kind of projects can be a bit difficult.
I mean, it depends. I would guess, but I cannot be sure about that. Most of us are. I, for example, am working full-time on it, and most of my colleagues as well. But of course, there are people who are just joining with 50% capacity in that consortia. But I guess what we are kind of good on not having like 10% capacity where you join one meeting and then basically your capacity is over. So I would guess, but again, I couldn't guarantee it, that most of them are actually almost working full-time.
Thank you.
And maybe one addition, I mean, these 281 people are really just the devs. The consortia itself is much bigger, so there are a lot more people doing the planning and things in the background. Okay, any more questions? Just raise your hand and ask for the mic. Okay.
You talked about the weekly meeting, the office hours. And when you have participates more than 100 people, and did you do a video call chat? And all people from every team were inside this chat? Or was it divided into different groups?
So actually, yeah, we are using a video chat. We have infrastructure for that in the consortia, and like I said, that's why it's not completely open yet, but we are joining. Also, we are not over 100 people. Usually, you will find the same folks all the time, and it averages at around 30 people. Okay. Yeah, that's it. It worked great. We don't have to divide in that case, and I guess. I think what also Wayne is trying to do is moving around the time slot. That's not happening for us, and that's why I think we just don't get every of these 100 people.
I was just curious about the amount of people taking part and participate, and when you have 130 people and everybody wants to say something, it could be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, moderating that meeting is sometimes not easy, but with the half of an hour official agenda and then just opening it up, we have some Miro boards prepared where you can hand in your questions before, and then we just go through them. And right now it worked out. Like I said, average is at around 30 people, but we are constantly making marketing for that meeting because we think the value is great. We just miss a lot of people, I think.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Or waiting for the train to bring them home, I guess. So then, again, thanks a lot, and have fun in the last talk for today, I guess.